Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 26 of the 40 Days of Hope, a message today that we can all encounter God in a very special way. Your reading yesterday was on the first chapter in 1 Corinthians. The author of this, it's actually a letter in the Bible, and this person that wrote this letter was Paul. And he's addressing a church in the city of Corinth, which is actually a large cosmopolitan city, major trade city at the time. And I suppose he's speaking to this church about how they can live God's way in a very corrupt society. According to my study Bible here, he had had lots of reports, I suppose, of problems, especially regarding division and jealousy in the church, and he addresses that throughout. So by the end of the 40 days, you'll actually finish this letter. But I want to speak actually about Paul's story, because I think it's quite remarkable. Paul he actually once hated Christians, hated the Christian faith, and he persecuted Christians without mercy. He approved when Stephen was stoned to death because he believed in Jesus, that he'd risen from the dead and that he was God. So, he went out of his way almost to get prisoners who were following Jesus Christ. He really had this hatred. And the story is actually in Acts of his conversion in Acts chapter 9. And it actually says, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. And a few verses later it says, as he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. As he fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. I am Jesus whom you are persecuting, he replied. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And from this point on, after that encounter with Jesus, Saul, his name is also Saul in the Bible as well, and he's also known as that, I suppose. He was completely changed after that encounter, and he went on to, I suppose, just really shape how, I suppose, Christianity was shared throughout that time, particularly among Gentiles. These were people who weren't born into knowing about God at all, and born into the Jewish race, I suppose, who would have been informed about God. I was just said I'd tell a little story about my first real encounter with God. I was 16 going on 17 that summer, and my parents had gone away. I was left, I wasn't very diligent with my money, and I'd spent it all because I thought I wouldn't really need it. And then my friend said, oh, let's go to the cinema. We're going to go to the cinema. I think it was the following day. And I says, oh my gosh, they're here feeding me while my family are away, and I'm going to have to ask them to pay for my cinema ticket, So, I just prayed a very innocent prayer, Lord, I really need just 20 quid. Please save me the embarrassment of having to ask for money. And I searched my pockets everywhere around the house, and like my suitcase, and I couldn't find it. And I says, right, God, please, I kept praying. And that evening I was actually at a meeting, and I was actually at a prayer meeting. And someone was actually just showing, I suppose, how salvation is actually a free gift from God, and he felt to hold up, the speaker was holding up a fiver, and he was saying, okay, the first person to grab this, so someone was running up. And then suddenly, he did that twice, I think. And then everyone was like amazed. He was just giving out these free fivers. And then suddenly he held up a 20, was it a pound back then? I think it was a pound, no, it was euros, what am I on about? 20 euro note. And he said, does anyone in a pink jumper come up and collect this? Now, I was the only one in a bright pink jumper nearby, so I went up, got my 20 quid, and I went up to him afterwards, and I says, I'll give it back to you, it's fine, maybe that was just for the demo for everyone. And he says, no, for some reason I felt really, really strongly that I had to give you 20 quid tonight, and that was my first real, I suppose, undebatable answer to prayer for me. It was such a major coincidence, and I really, I felt that was my first kind of encounter, I suppose, with understanding the power of prayer. Okay, so that's all I'm going to share tonight, guys. Enjoy reading 1 Corinthians chapter 2 tonight, and talk to you tomorrow.